We are now heading for Alderney Island in the Channel Islands. The Channel Islands. The islands are not part of the United Kingdom or the European Union, but are possessions of the British Crown, with independent administrations. The inhabitants are, however, British citizens. Alderney Lighthouse, Channel Islands, built 1912, height 105 feet, roughly 32 metres. The light was 4 white flashes every 15 seconds, range in the 20-mile range. Foghorn was a siren, did 4 blasts every 60 seconds. The lighthouse was automated in 1997, which means that's when the keepers were withdrawn. It isn't open to the public. So in you go, and the first place you come to is the bathroom and the toilet. Now bathrooms aren't very normal for a lighthouse, but on an island lighthouse they are. Bit of a luxury for some keepers. This is the kitchen. There's one of the keepers who's just getting his food bagged up, ready to go in the freezer. He's just come on board, as this is relief day, and I came on board with the keepers. I was here just to do the video and staying overnight. They're here for their 28 days duty. So 3 keepers here would do 28 days duty, followed by 28 days free from duty, and they alternate with another crew of 3. This is the living room, where they spend most of the time when they're not on watch. But this being an island, even here, they wouldn't spend a lot of the time when they're off watch. They would be off exploring the island, I guess. Be a shame not to. These are the keepers' bedrooms, and on this lighthouse, as they have plenty of room, the keepers get a real luxury, and that is a bedroom each. As this is somebody else's space, I only go into a bedroom that I'm allowed to film as such. And back down that very long corridor, and right at the far end is the engine room. On our right now is the living room and kitchen where we just came from, and on our left is another bedroom. In this area is the sort of a watch room. There's the logbook for filling in all the daily things that have gone on. And there's an area where this lighthouse, being one of the Channel Islands and one of the only places where they're manned 24/7, they also used to look after the 999 calls and transfer the calls to whatever department was needed. They also did the same on Sark. So the keepers literally became the 999 call operatives. We're now in the base of the tower. And further down there again is the engine room. We're heading on down that way. Turn to look back when we get at the far end. Far end, almost into the engine room. On our left, those little steps go up to the fog trumpets. On our right is another room that's got a electrical charger, battery charger, and then into another little watch room which holds meteorological equipment. It sends the weather in code format on the computer from the Stevenson screen they've collected, and it goes into the weather forecast later on. Back out of there, and we're now heading into the engine room. Now in the engine room you've got two great big fog compressors. One would be on in fog, the other would be standby. You have battery chargers, you have a work bench, you have the standby diesel generator in here. This lighthouse is on mains electricity, then standby diesel, and then the light up top would be final fail-safe, would be battery power. These tanks, they're called the air receiving tanks. So when the compressors are on for the foghorn, or the compressor is on for the foghorn, it fills these tanks, and when you get to the proper pressure, you then turn a few dials and lots of other thing goes on before you get the noise coming blasting out of the trumpet above. So as I said, two diesel compressors, one on, one a standby. They're normally great big Revel compressors, that Revel of Ipswich, yeah. Very reliable. And these life belts, or life rings, are from wrecks found around the island. And we're back out of there, heading towards the base of the tower. We're now in the base, and we're going to be heading on up to the lens, or the lantern. This next room in the tower was just for visiting technicians, mechanics, electricians, that sort of thing, and maybe the odd supernumerary assistant keeper with no bedroom to stay in. But most of the time it's now an empty room. Would make a lovely Airbnb, wouldn't it? Done up, of course. Can't live like a keeper. Back out of there and carry on up. And the heavy breathing is because the camera is right in front of my face. I'm looking through the viewfinder and the microphone's right next to me. Right on this landing, those triangular pieces of glass, that's spare lantern glazing. This is the green tube that you get in most old lighthouses, and that used to house a weight slowly falling down the tower on a wire or a chain that drove a clockwork motor round at the top of the lighthouse, which drove the lens around, which it did back in the day before they brought in electric motors, etc. So in those days we wouldn't have engines or anything. It would be very, well, a lot quieter than it is now. And straight into the service room. Notice the red telephone, the green and the normal ones on the wall there. This was from what I was saying downstairs. That's the 999 call area. In case the keeper's upstairs when a call comes in, he has to be able to handle it still. I'm not sure that this station was still on 999 calls when I was there, or it had been discontinued. In this room you got the green tube. The last flight of steps were always the steepest, and you had the curved wooden cupboard you saw as you passed it there, that housed the bulbs and things like that. Or back in the day would have housed the mantles for the oil lights and stuff like that, all the spares. Up into the lantern. Got the old safety gate there that was put in while I was still in service. Before that, well, I know I've fallen down those steps before now on a lighthouse, the steep ones, and several other keepers have told me they've slid down them as well. One of the hazards. Right, in here you've got this great big lens on your right. It's made up of lots and lots of pieces of glass, prisms and great big central bullseyes, which are the magnifying lenses, and the whole thing revolves on a trough full of mercury, so it's so light to move, and in fact it weighs many tons. You can do it with your little finger. That sign there is for the apparatus that used to be there, the old-fashioned clockwork mechanism I mentioned before, what the green tube was for, and those two electric motors underneath, one on, one a standby, and that hand for the door handle is on most of the lighthouses. The rollers, they just steady the light when it goes around. They don't actually take the weight. The thing is floating on mercury. And this is me just turning it by hand just to get the sun or the light glinting on it. You won't get the sun on it because keepers have to keep the curtains up during the day, because the sun can magnify back for all those bullseyes and melt cables or set fire to things. So normal practice is to have the curtains up during the day. They come down at sunset when you put the light on. Now this structure, all the metal in it is phosphor bronze. I believe it's the same metal they use for making cannons. As I was saying, it would weigh many tons, and you could spin that with your little finger. It feels that light floating on mercury. Each of those bullseyes is a flash. You try and imagine like searchlights going out, going round and round, shining through the bullseyes, and that is what gives the flash. So it's the speed you spin the lens at, and the bullseyes, how many there are, determines what the flash will be. And the clock on the wall up in the lantern room was always made specially for that lighthouse. It was, the second hand on it didn't operate as a normal second hand. It operated at the same speed the lens went round at. So in case everything failed, poor old lighthouse keeper could stick a handle in and sit there watching the clock all night till he was relieved. He'd wind away to keep in time with the clock. Thus, no light would ever go out as such. They'd keep the light burning. And that's a metal halide light bulb. There only seems to be one in this lighthouse, so you would have an emergency light outside on the gallery somewhere, the so-called battery one I was talking about. From here on in, the last piece of this video, I'll not speak at all. It'll just be natural sound or natural sounds, just so you get a feel for the place. I'll shortly go out on the gallery, and I won't talk out there either. And there's that clock with the so-called second hand spinning around the same speed that the lens goes round at. That gives you the 4 flashes every 60 seconds.